I am happy to join with you today in what will go down as history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languish in the corners of American society and find himself in exile in his own land. And so we have come here today to dramatize such a shameful condition. In a sense, we have come to the nation's capital to cast a check. When the architects of our great Republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence, they would sign a promissory note to which every American falls to hear. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, will be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on its promissory note insofar as the citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring such a sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check that has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe there is insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we have come here to cash this check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hollow spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of a cooling off or take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now it's time to make real promises of democracy. Now it's time to rise from the dark, desolate valleys of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now it's time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial justice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now it's time to make justice a reality for all God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of this moment. This weltering summer of the Negro legitimate discontent will not pass until there is a invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hoped the Negro needed to blow off some steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation will go back to business as usual. And there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwind of revolts will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads to the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. And again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy have engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize their destiny is tied to our destiny. And they have come to realize their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we should always march ahead. We cannot turn our back. And those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue or travel, cannot gain lodging in motels of the highways and hotels of the city. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negro in New York believed he had nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied till justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. And some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered and bruised by the storm of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums of the ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair, I say to you today, my friends. And even though we face difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slaves owners would sit down at the table together of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even in the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with heat of injustice, sweltering with heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that one day, my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down there in Alabama, with this vicious racist, with this governor having his lips dripping the words of interposition and nullification, one day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that every valley should be exalted, every hill and mountain made low, the rough places made plain and the crooked places made straight, and the glory of the Lord should be revealed and all the flesh should see it together. This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we'll be able to hew out of Mount Despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we'll be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful sympathy of brotherhood. With this faith, we'll be able to work together, pray together, struggle together, go to jail together, stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day that all God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to become a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the hiding Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow caps of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the stone mountains of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and we allow freedom to ring, we let it ring from every village, every hamlet, from every state, every city. We'll be able to speed up to the day when all God's children, black man and white man, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave that speech August 28, 1963. It is 2024, and we still have those same experiences. we still suffer from racism and police brutality. In 2024, we are still in exile. There are still establishments in many locations where you won't see for whites only signs where we're not welcome. Some will go as far as saying, we don't want your kind. We're still hanged, profiled, and looked at in a manner less than equal. Yes, we made progress. We had a black president and we filled many positions that we never thought possible. But we're still struggling. We have deep-rooted wounds that are not visible to the naked eye. So just because you see us smiling doesn't mean we're not suffering. In 2024, I too have a dream. Like Martin Luther King, I dream that we are looked at as equal, that people saw us for who we are and not be judged by what we look like. This is a dream that I hope becomes reality, but until children are not taught racism by the elders and that they are taught that all people are created equal and everyone should be treated the same regardless of race and ethnicity, my dream shall only remain a dream.